Welcome back to the party package. My name is Owen, and welcome back to the show. Of course, the show that most people are turning into is the NHL season previews. Now, this time we have Les Canadiens de Montreal, and this is an interesting team. They got the first draft pick of this entry draft this year, and they pick up Juraj Slafkovsky, who I thought was who should go first. Everyone thought it should be Shane Wright. Of course, Shane Wright drops down to number 4, being passed up by 3 teams, even though he was the number 1 pick for the last, 2 years at least. So they pick up Slafkovsky, and I personally think he's going to slide in perfectly onto that top line. Slafkovsky, from what I saw of him, I think this guy, he's 6'3", 218 pounds. He's heavier than a lot of the guys that I see on a lot of these teams while looking at them. A lot of the guys that are at least 6'3" are only barely 200 to maybe 210. This guy's 218. I think it was 218, pretty sure. I think this guy's going to perfectly slide in onto, especially the Canadiens, a team that needs that extra oomph of offense. And I think he's going to perfectly go on that first line. Maybe he goes on the second to maybe spread around the talent along the team. But I could see him putting on the first line or second line and switching Dadonov back and forth. But as I was looking at this team and writing down the names, I, of course, start off with offense. I write offense's name down. I was writing them, and I was like, this team really doesn't seem that bad. Overall, if I look all the way down to the fourth line, I'm like, this team kind of has better production than a lot of the teams that I've been writing so far. Usually by the fourth line, I see guys with only 6 points or 0 points or 10 and who only play 30 games in a season or have played all 70 and get nothing. And I was like, what is wrong with this team? And I was looking at them and going through. So let me talk about the pros first. The pros is kind of what I already said. Is looking at this team on paper, on offense, it doesn't seem to be that bad. You got Rem Pitlick with 37, Evans with 29, Armia 14, who I think has a lot of skill. I've always thought he could maybe jump out and become a bigger name, but hasn't done that yet. But looking at this list, I was like, they kind of got good depth. This is kind of good, but the closer I looked at it and was looking overall at this team, I realized kind of what the problem is that this team is made out of 30-point players and a couple of more than 30 points sprinkled in there. Now, that's what I realized about their offense. And then I started writing about the defense, which even got worse. So let's talk about the problems of this team. As I was writing, I realized that really Suzuki only has 61. Last year, people were saying Caulfield was terrible. He actually ended up with 43 points. Not terrible, but he is the second leadingest guy on this team in points. When Dadonov wasn't on the team, but second most points on this team. And he was being sent down to the minors, which is an interesting thing. That's a whole other thing. That's so confusing to me. But just looking at this team overall, it's just 30-point players on offense. And then when you get to defense, things get even worse. I didn't realize, to myself at least, that the defense on the Canadiens was this bad. But I think it's because they've gone over a huge shift from 2 seasons ago to this season. Well, huge. But last season, they didn't have Shea Weber. But before that, they had Weber and Petrie on this team. And I thought they were okay, they got 2 guys on there. They also had Sherratt. That's 3 decent enough defensemen to maybe put a team together. But this season going into, at least, you've only got Edmondson and Savard, Matheson, Weidman, Barron, and Harris, who have barely played any NHL hockey. This team's defense this has been the worst defense I've covered in all of these videos so far. In, I think, the 14 videos I've made, this is the worst defensive line. Sorry about that. This has been the worst defensive line that I've ever seen on one of these teams. And I actually kind of like the Canadiens. I've always kind of cheered for them. So this is kind of making me open my eyes, and I was like, how does a team go from one season making it to the finals in a big run and actually beating teams like the Golden Knights in the process, the Maple Leafs in the process? How does this team go from great to literally what last in the league last season? And I've realized that the problem with this team, I was questioning it. I was like, what is going on here? What happened to this team? And I realized something. This is the type of team that you can put in the playoffs. And you've got those hard-working players that I talk about on these teams. That's why I think like the Panthers picked up Kachuk instead of having Huberdeau on the team. And that's what I've been saying about all these teams so far. I was like, what is wrong with them? They have that grit and fight, that fight, that unrelenting, don't give up, winning attitude on this team. The problem is that in the main regular season where you have to go all the way through 82 games to make it there, this team doesn't have that skill to go through it. But this is the type of team perfect for the playoffs. You guys got Caulfield, who's trying to prove a name for himself. So is Suzuki. You got guys like Anderson, who's a big guy that can try to tumble through players and score. You got like Gallagher, one of the guys like Garland and Gallagher, the two guys that just like never give up, always push, even if they're like 4-on-1, they will try to get through it. They see death in the eyes and they laugh in its face. That's the type of players on this team, and it was all backed up by probably the best goaltender overall in at least the last 10 years. Is Carey Price was back there to stop everything that came his way. Carey Price in that playoff run was absolutely insane, was as good as he ever has been in his career in that playoff run. And last season, he only played 5 games. He was out the rest. You also had Jake Allen take over along with, was it Lindgren? I kind of forget who the backup goalie was. But then you got 2 goalies that can't really hold much on their own anymore. Jake Allen used to be good. He's really fallen off a cliff. Carey Price was out. He's supposed to be back this season, but Carey Price has only played 5 games in the last year. Only 5 games last year is not very good for an aging goaltender going into a new season with this team. So for me, the fixes to this team is that don't even worry about the playoffs. The playoffs are out of the question, especially with the fact with the being in the Atlantic division, so you're definitely not getting top 3, and the combination of the Atlantic and the Metropolitan being so stacked on each side, they're not going to make it to a wild card spot. So for me, this team needs to start looking forward to the future, which I think they've started doing with picking up with Caulfield, Suzuki, Slavkovsky. You also got Dvorak and Anderson, Kirby Dach as well. What a big pickup there at the trade deadline. He only got 26 points last year, but I feel like he could be a huge draw. Andrew, if he can play back to his potential, I know he hasn't been the same since whatever's happened with him. But I think I've always liked him. I think he could come back and make a bounce back. Pitlick, Evans, they got a lot of young guys, and now they've added like a Dadonov who could have a good season every once in a while. Like they have a lot of guys they're a well-rounded team, just like how I said about the Columbus Blue Jackets, is that this team is well-rounded top to bottom, but they don't have that defense. And I think this year, if I was in charge of the Canadiens, I would go after what they should have done instead of trading Weber and Petrie for a guy like Matheson, which is a dumb move. But they needed to pick up a guy like a young defenseman, a young puck-moving defenseman who can drive the offense. And that's where this team falls apart. Because one stat that I was looking at last year is what is really wrong with this team is that, first off, they were 26th in goals for. There was only 6 teams worse than them scoring goals, and that was the names of like the Coyotes, just to give an idea of who was worse than them. And they were absolutely dead last or first, depending on how you look at things like this. They got scored on the most for any team in the league, which is their biggest problem. They can't produce offense, and they couldn't stop the offense against them, which drove them right down to hell. But they got to pick up Slavkovsky in the process, so I guess you got that guy, but that was their main problem. This is a team that works on a goaltender stopping everything going through them, and then these guys try to grit and grind their way to scoring a goal. But now they don't have that goal. Maybe Carey Price isn't that goalie anymore. I've loved Carey Price, but I don't see him going well into this next season and being that Carey Price of the old. I think this is going to be the year he starts falling off, and I think this team needs to move on from him. I'm actually not sure how long his contract is left, but if I was them, I would, instead of moving Petrie for Matheson, try to pick up a young defenseman like a Bouchard or something from the Oilers. Pick up a puck-moving guy like D'Angelo. A team like this could have, Canadian fans probably would have been outraged if they picked up a Tony DeAngelo. But that guy, that type of player, they need a defense to drive forward the offense. If they could get, like, just off the top of my head, like a Tyson Berry and a DeAngelo, those two guys, and you could sit them next to like a Dennis Savard or a Matheson or a Weidman, really. Like, you could put those guys with them, and they can drive the offense. They need some puck-moving guys, some fast defensemen to push it back down the ice. And also, they need a goaltender. They need to find a young, good goaltender for the future. Look for the future. This team could be a great team next season. Not this season. But if they could look forward to next season, and they're not going to get like a Jake Ottinger. But if they could get a Jake Ottinger-like player, like a Spencer Knight, or one of those young goalies that have obviously a great potential to be a future good goalie for a team, they need to pick someone up like that and look forward to next season. Because this team has it already. This team has it already for the future. They just got to get those pieces on defense. Offense, they're fine. Don't leave it alone. These guys will grow. Doc will grow. Safkovsky will grow. Suzuki's going to grow. Caulfield's going to grow. Maybe not in height. But they need defense and goaltending if they want to be a future star team. Next year could be their year. Not this year. This year, I would like to see them contend and see Safkovsky get to at least 40, 50-plus points. I could see him doing at least 60. 60 points this year would be nice for Safkovsky to look forward to the future. But that's really all I have to say about the Canadiens de Montreal. And until next time, I would love to say this in French, but I don't know how to say it. Please pick up your free subscription down below by hitting that red subscribe button, the same color as this guy's abs right here. If you like this video, please leave a like, not a dislike. You can go down below to the comments section. Leave any tangents, rants, opinions, or other types of reviews, comments, concessions, or concerns. And until next time, too sweet, and ta-ta for now.